Hello everyone. So now for my next solution. I just look at all the problems in the world and I try and figure out the most logical solution. Right now, our government is stealing our taxes from us involuntarily, at, basically at gunpoint, and wasting the money and just spending it on things we don't agree with. Their budgets, if a government entity doesn't use all the money, they don't get more the next year. So government entities a lot of times will deliberately spend money that they don't need to just to keep their budgets up. And there's just a big waste within our government, and we all know it, and they're funding and doing things we don't agree with, and we're forced to pay for these things that we don't morally agree with. So I've drawn a line in the sand and said I will not pay for things I don't morally agree with, which to me is bombs. Everybody else is different. But there's a lot of things our government's doing that's wrong, and I morally won't fund, and I want to stand by my morals. And if they want to try and arrest me because of what I morally believe, and if they want to come after me, then fine. I'll gladly represent myself in court and stand up by myself. Like I said, I will not be an accessory to their crimes. And if you help fund someone when they're committing a crime, you're an accessory. So legally, I shouldn't be forced to be an accessory. So all I have to do in court is prove that the government is committing a crime in some way, shape, or form, and therefore I shouldn't have to be an accessory to that. So we all got a different perspective. That's my perspective, but I'm openly being very open and honest about my stance. I am running for sheriff, and as far as legally standing, it checks out. Legally, we shouldn't be forced to be an accessory. Anyways, beyond being an accessory to crimes, we shouldn't be forced to do something we morally don't agree with. So if they're doing something against your morals, you shouldn't be forced to do that either. So freedom should be voluntary, and we should have a voluntary tax system where we decide to fund the things we want, and that way Republicans could fund the Republican stuff they want, Democrats could fund the Democrat stuff we want, and we would all be able to coexist in that way. Instead of letting politicians rob us endlessly, we give them the money that we voluntarily decide to give them, and they work their budgets from there. So instead of having endless budgets and robbing our kids of all the money in their future, they get the budget that we decide to give them, which is I think the most logical way to balance the budget and fix everything, because you can't go wrong with that. You can't spend more than you got if you don't have it. You can't go into debt if you're only spending what you got. That's the way I live my life. I don't have credit or anything, and I managed to survive just fine. So I think that the alternative solution to any government entity is the free market. The free market can always run things so much more efficiently. If you drive down the road and you look at the interstate and you see 10 guys working on the road, and 8 of them are standing there holding a shovel, propping up a shovel while one guy works, that is an extreme waste. And as a business owner, I can tell you for a fact that when you own a business, that stuff don't happen, because that's just money straight out of your pocket that you're wasting away. So as a business owner, you have to compete, and there's a lot of different aspects to it. So when you have to be competitive, you have to turn in the lowest bid, and in order to get the lowest bid, you got to run things efficiently, and that's where the free market will always be so much better than the government. And we need to fund and figure out how to make everything as free market as possible. From there, people say, well, if you don't fund the government, what about the roads? What about people in need and all that? So if you look at how much our government wastes and what they spend, if we took a fraction of what we spend and give to the federal government to piss away, if we kept that locally and invested it into our local economies, do you know how strong our local communities would be? If we went from, if we even doubled what we have locally and invest locally, our communities would flourish, and then we could take all the rest of that money we save and put it in our pocket, or even do other things with it. And I think that we just need to trim the fat, and the fat's the federal government. And if we can just make our communities the best possible, every community everywhere can just raise up their communities, and we won't need the federal government. So just cut the federal government out. and have them just be in charge of minimal stuff. At this point, they're just having lobbyists create laws, thousands-page laws that steal our freedoms. So it's at this point, we have enough laws, and all we're doing is losing freedoms every day that they continue to go on, and they just manipulate the system for their own material gain. And at some point, we have to figure out how to stop this. We have to stand up. It's basically like the game of Monopoly, and you know the part where somebody wins and has everything, and you're just going around going, "Ah, man, this sucks. I can't do nothing." We're there. That's life. That's our existence. And we need to figure out how to do something different. And my idea is to peacefully secede locally and step away from the federal government, and all of us keep our federal income taxes and instead invest it into our local communities and raise our local communities up, and do it voluntarily, and voluntarily give to the things in need. So you just figure out people who are on disability or whatever, and get a list, and figure out how much we need to fund, and then we can work together as a community. And same thing with the roads, and same thing with these entities that we use. We just need to figure out the budget, and then figure out where we're at, and people can voluntarily contribute, and we can compare to what we voluntarily do to what is normally just stolen and goes through this big wasteful entity called the federal government, and then comes back to us a little bit, just a fraction, after they put their dirty fingers in all of it and take 90% of it, So instead of just pissing away 90%, we just keep it right here locally and just cut out the middleman. That's just robbing us. And so logically, it kind of checks out. So from there, we have a voluntary system where the people can fund society and keep all the cool things that we like going on, and in fact make them much better. So what I'm proposing is not the end of roads and the end of not social security, but disability and all this stuff. What I'm proposing is a way to make it much better and make it voluntary.
I want to take a second to clarify that Social Security is what has already been robbed out of our checks, so the federal government owes us that money no matter what. Otherwise, it will be theft for a second time. Math dictates Social Security will one day fail. It should be our own freedom and responsibility to decide our own fate. We can choose to contribute or choose to plan on our own, but either way, it should be voluntary.
And from there, businesses, it's the same aspect. Instead of having sales tax, and instead of forcing all that, a forced sales tax, make it a voluntary sales tax, to where business on their door of their business can voluntarily decide what tax they want to charge. Right now, we have a hotel tax, a tourism tax, if you will, to where if somebody stays in a hotel, they have to pay a tax here. I live at Lake of the Ozarks, and there's just a tourism tax, and what they do is that tax goes into a big fund. And then there's a local group, I think it was the TCLA or something like that. I don't remember the specific names of the groups and all this stuff. But there's a group that runs all this money, and lo and behold, it's usually the biggest businesses around here. And they get to decide where this money goes and how it's advertised, and it promotes the lake, And what we found is that there were people voting 40 times for one thing, the people that run this, and that they were just basically manipulating the system and making it beneficial for themselves so these businesses could prop up. So they're robbing the community of our taxes, and then they were making other smaller businesses contribute to this, and then at the end of it, they were just manipulating the system and propping themselves up. And it was all through a tax that they were allowed to pass. And so I don't think that that is the right answer ever, to tax somebody. So what we could logically have done, and can do this anytime in the community, anywhere, and this is a way for businesses to charge sales tax. So what you do is, on the front door of your business, you put what you charge in taxes, and then you break it down, and you give how much of each percentage is going to where. So if you wanted to charge 0% sales tax and keep your product just as cheap as you can, and that's your business model, and that's how you want to do business, that's your free will to do that. And if you want to charge 100% sales tax and give it all to the school, or give it all to the community tax for hotels, in which case you start an advertising fund or whatever, if that's your free will, go do it. go do it. Charge your sales tax. Put it on your paper. Like there's a Pruitt Point in Osage Beach where Lowe's and all these other businesses are, and there's a tax. If you look, you can look on your receipt, and not only is there a tax for the state and everything else, you'll look and there's a Pruitt tax, an actual Pruitt tax on your receipt where they charge you. And that's what he does. He just charges a tax for these businesses using his property. He's a smart man, a shrewd businessman, but at the same time, I feel that taxation's theft, and I mean, that I don't like being taxed without knowing where it's going, and that's going directly into his pocket. So I personally don't like that tax, but it's our free will to shop there, and I still shop in those places. I won't lie. I just and I know that tax is there, and I just deal with it. But that's our free will to decide what we want to do, and that's the way it should be. He has the free will to charge that tax. I have the free will to draw a line in the sand and say, no, I won't shop there, or to go, yeah, whatever, I'll go shop there. And we can do that with all aspects. And like I said, we could put the tax percentage which we charge on the door of our businesses or wherever, you know, and make it completely open and honest, and just charge and charge for whatever services we want. And so if we put a 5% sales tax, you could break it down. 5% goes to schools, 2% goes to roads, 5% goes to people in need. So you got a 12% tax that a business just creates, and that's their free will.
Once again, we had a local hotel tax that all lodging businesses had to pay, yet a small group controlled that money and manipulated it for their own desires. If a business wants to voluntarily contribute, that's their free will, but they should never be forced. The businesses that want that tax are free to create their own organization and run it as they please. That's the great thing about freedom and the free market.
I think there would be a good idea to be some oversight and to ensure that money is invested if it's taken from the people, because if you take it from the people and they don't reinvest it in that stuff, that's theft. And at that point, somebody has stolen from someone, there is a victim, there is a crime, and somebody should go to jail. So, you know, you got to be honest with what you're doing. You can't take sales tax and then not pay it. But yeah, at that point, we would have a voluntary society to where everybody has their own free decision to shop where they want, pay the taxes they want, and everything would function much more efficiently, especially if we got the free market involved. So we're going to save money getting the free market involved. We're going to save a ton of money cutting out the middleman of the federal government that we all know is just massively wasteful on every aspect. And then we're going to be able to actually raise up our communities by producing multiple times revenue for these necessities that we need. And it's logically the best solution that we could possibly do. So a lot of times when I tell people I refuse to pay my federal income taxes, their jaws hit the floor, the room gets real silent, it becomes real awkward. But if you think about it and let it play out, logically it makes the most sense. And logically we shouldn't be forced to do something against our will, against our morals, against what we believe in. And we shouldn't be stolen from. Taxation is theft. If you take something from someone that they don't willingly want to give you, that's theft. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. And once again, running as sheriff, I would never arrest anyone for not paying taxes, ever. That's my guaranteed word right there, because if you force someone to do something, you're stealing from them and you're the bad guy. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. That's my perception. But logically, if you play it out, I can't go to somebody down the road and go, you know what, I'm going to really help the world. You got to give me 20% of everything you got right now, or I'm going to throw you in a cage. And they go, what? What did you say to me? And I said, yeah, you got. I'm trying to help, and I just need you to give me 20% of everything you make of your entire life's work, or I'm going to throw you in a cage. And they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. But yet we do that every day with our entire lives, and we work and slave our lives away and give 20% of every one out of every 5 days we work is wasted because we give it to a wasteful entity. And they just perpetrate and continue this system of manipulation. And there comes a point to where we have to fix it and we have to stop. And I guess that's what I'm doing all by myself right now at this point, is I'm drawing a line in the sand and I'm telling the federal government I will not be an accessory to crimes. I will not be forced to do something against my morals, and I will not pay you guys. So I will represent myself. I'll take it to jury, and I believe in jury nullification. I think the jury will stand up, and if I can get one juror to just see things my way, it's a hung jury, and we'll just go on forever. But I'm willing to take that chance, and I'm putting my entire life on the line. They could come and get me, and I could lose, but I could also win. So I'm putting my hands into a jury right now, and just having faith that it's going to work out. And yeah, like I said, I'm drawing a line in the sand all by myself and trying to make a change in this world, and I'm just trying to be the change I believe in. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not trying to be violent or create any problems or take away from people in need or make the roads be destructed or anything. I'm trying to make all these entities better. And if you logically think about it, we could save money and cut the fat and make them so much better, because our government is just extremely wasteful. And we all know it. And we're all just sitting here watching it, not knowing any way to control it whatsoever. And so if it takes $1 billion to become president, money controls the system and is no longer in we the people's hands. So logically, what can we do? They have a monopoly on violence. There's no way we could be violent. We don't want anything like that. So once again, peaceful revolution, if you will, peaceful secede. We peacefully secede from the federal government and create our own ways locally. There's a home rule charter, and you can pass around petitions locally and create your own laws and your own way of life locally. It's legally allowed through a home rule charter. It's a document that we can create and is legally a thing. And so we push for that, we create it, and I mean, if we have to create the ability to put it in a home rule charter, that's it. But anyways, no matter what, we the people, if we vote it into effect locally, that's should be our freedom to do so. And so we stand up locally and vote to secede from the federal government and choose our own ways of life and not pay income taxes to them, keep our money locally, raise our communities up, and make everything great. If you look around right now, inflation is skyrocketing. Years ago, I said that hyperinflation can happen if you look around through other societies. As their dollars collapse and as things get worse, hyperinflation takes over. And once that takes over, it can cost wheelbarrow loads full of $100 bills just to get a loaf of bread. And at that point, things are out of control. And we're headed to that point eventually. And no matter what we have on our forefront is either a war or a dollar collapse, because the petrodollar, if you will, is based on oil. Our dollar is based on oil. And if they start trading oil and using and doing all this other stuff with other dollars, right now they use the American dollar, but if they create another currency or use another currency, that's going to make our currency go self-destruct and be over with. And that's what we're on the verge of. The other countries have been working for this for years, and they're pretty much created it. There's a thing called the BRICS. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and so we're facing a possible dollar collapse with the tensions right now in other countries and stuff. I mean, we could even be facing a war or an EMP could happen or anything. So logically, we have to be prepared for any of these scenarios. And what can we do to prepare for, I mean, something terrible like a EMP or grid breakdown, because we got all these electric devices and the grid isn't strong enough to handle. Like, we just threw on all these electric cars for this year and stuff, and the grid wasn't strong enough to get us through last year. So what's going to happen when the grid breaks down? How are we going to survive? And I think that logically we have to prepare for moments like these. And in order to do that, all we really have to be able to do is eat. And that's our fundamental source for survival. So if we can just create a local way of generating food, we would be okay. So if everybody started growing their own food in their backyards and butchering our own meat and doing our own thing, we would be able to get the freedom and the power back into the people's hands locally and be able to feed ourselves and be prepared for any scenario and just have our communities function so much stronger. Grow food, not lawns. You know, all of our lawns, we spend all this time and energy growing something that doesn't even do anything, and then we go to the store and complain about the price of food. You just invested all your time and all your work into a grassy lawn that's a complete and total waste, and then you go and complain about food. Think about it. Think about it, people. Come on, man. If we all would just change our mindsets, we have to just change the way we perceive things and look at things. And if we instead, we would fill our lawns full of like fruit trees and gardens. And how amazing would that be if we had gardens in every yard and could feed ourselves locally in our local community? That would be truly amazing. It would be a beautiful thing. You look around and see just tomato plants and watermelons and everything in everybody's yard. That would be amazing. I think that would be a lot cooler than seeing grass. That's just my personal opinion, but we're just so ingrained with what we've been taught or what we've seen, and we don't ever think outside the box. There comes a point to where we're going to have to, because like I said, if the dollar collapses, or even a solar flare comes from the sun in 8 minutes, it could. There was a Carrington event in the 1800s that was so strong it lit telegraph stations on fire because of the electromagnetic pulse. And right now it would do that same thing to all of our cars, and all our electronics in the world would go up, belly up, and we wouldn't know what to do. But if we had a community full of gardens and everybody's front lawn, we would be fine. And in order to make this go just a little bit more efficiently, I've created basically a consignment store, if you will, where we just exchange goods in the community. And food would be the easiest way, where we go up, and if we have too many tomatoes one week, we go and we take it, and it's Josh's tomatoes in this section here, and people can buy them. And then I go to the store and I get the credit from the stuff they bought, and I can go buy their products. So I can go buy Susie's peppers and whatever else. Yeah, and so that way we can function and trade goods and services, have basically like a main depot. I was watching Pawn Stars the other day. I don't hardly ever watch TV, but I was watching one of the pawn shows, and they just brought up the fact that pawn stores used to be basically the community bank, almost, if you would. And that's where, and then that's, I was like, well, logically, I mean, it doesn't have to be a pawn store. It can be a consignment store, to where they don't make as much money as a pawn store because they really stick it to you. But we could have something run by the community to where we don't even the store doesn't even make a profit, to where we all just raise it up, and it's just it does bare minimum to function. I mean, where it pays the bills, where we would take a little bit out of everything, that we do, but to where it doesn't make a bunch of money, and we just run it in the community. And that way we could trade goods and services as well, and just use this depot as like a bank almost, you know what I mean? And a consignment store, bank, however you want to do it. But at that point, our community would be free, it would be efficient, it would be prepared, and it would just be the most efficient way to run things possible. And that's just the root of all I'm trying to do, is create freedom. And I think that I really want to create as much freedom as I can in this world, because that's what's going to create peace. Right now, everybody's mad at each other and constantly bickering and fighting because the government creates broad laws that takes everyone's freedom, and we're all sick of it. And everybody just wants the freedom to do their own thing and be left alone. We don't want to be told by the government what to do. We don't want to be controlled, and we're just sick of it. And therefore, freedom is the answer. Freedom is going to be what creates peace in this world.
And the free market is what will fix the economy and will allow things to be run much more efficiently.
So if we can just narrow it down and figure out a way to create freedom as much as possible, we'll create peace. And that's all I'm after. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I'll be posting videos like this once a day for a whole year. Do philosophy, tell funny stories, release inventions. I do all kinds of stuff. I'm just trying to help the world. I made a promise to my son. I'm trying to help the world for his brothers, and that's what I'm doing. So here I am, and I just appreciate you guys for keeping up. Thank you, guys.
One final problem people may bring up is the military. I believe we should mind our own business and do unto others what we would like done unto us. We should bring all our troops home and use them to protect our borders, thus ensuring our country is safer than ever. We can voluntarily choose to fund this idea or not, ensuring freedom remains no matter what.